So welcome back to the garden. It is April 1st, and I've decided to quit gardening. If you know, you know. So what am I doing in April? The first thing that I really just need to do is a little more garden cleanup. So let me take care of that now. And while I'm doing this, let me just explain that these ropes are made of sisal, and this is something that I buy from Johnny's once every few years at this point, and the sisal lasts a long time. And what I do is use these pieces of sisal to trellis my tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers, pretty much any plant as a hanging garden. They last a little over a year, but I find that when the plants are ready to be trellised for the second time, this one from the prior year is already rotten. This year, I'm just gonna cut all of these, even though it feels like I'm gonna have to cut these just to redo them. And I have to say that sisal rope is probably my favorite trellising option for a few reasons. The first is because I can buy that spool for about 60 bucks and I can trellis hundreds of plants. So the second thing is this is biodegradable. So you could just leave this and over time it's going to compost itself. Third thing, birds actually take this and they use it and help build their nest with it. So it's biodegradable, the birds like it, it's cheap, and you're not adding plastic to the garden. You're not spending hundreds of dollars on all these silly tomato trellises. You can just do this as you need it, cut a piece to length and go. So I highly recommend using sisal. And when I'm doing that and I'm tying up all my plants, it's a good opportunity to inspect all the plants, kind of see how they're growing. So it kind of forces you to come out here and be in the garden and enjoy the process. All right, so I got the garden roof all cleaned up here, garden trellis, and now I've got a lot of debris on the ground that I gotta clean up. So we're gonna do that, but maybe let's take a look at the pond real quick. So here's the aqueduct that I built last year. Falls down into the rockway here, and that goes into the goldfish pond. I think I counted about 30 goldfish about a week ago. This year I gave the Japanese maple right over there a little bit of a trim. And there's also a few frogs in here. There's a big bullfrog. I don't know if you can spot him, but he's in the frame right now. He's right there, down in there. Well, you probably saw him by now. So there's not too much going on this side of the garden yet. The main things that are green are really just the onion clumps from last year's onions and carrots. There's a lot of little carrots popping up. But back over here, we got a little bit of cleanup to do. Figured I'd take a quick break to talk about the garden tools I'm using. This one should be pretty obvious, but it's not. This is just the metal rake. And the second tool I'm using is a tool that I always forget the name of. So if you know the name of this, please comment and tell me what this is. This makes it nice and easy, and this is metal. So this is metal right here. But this makes it nice and easy to dig right under those smaller weeds and just deroot them, unroot them, get the roots, and loosen them up. And the third thing that I'm about to start using is the almighty broom. And this is a nice lightweight broom that has seen better days. This is really just to clean the paths off the landscape fabric here. If you don't have landscape fabric, you probably don't need the broom. And I thought now might be a good time to ask if you've watched this far and you like the video so far, could you tap the like button? And if you haven't already, could you also tap the subscribe button? I'm going to be posting more videos of the garden updates throughout the year. You won't have to remember to look for these garden updates. They'll just pop up in your feed. Maybe while I clean up this part of the garden here, you could just think about tapping the subscribe button and maybe even tap it too. So we're looking a little bit better over here. This right here, I almost pulled this, but I am pretty sure that this is cilantro. Here is an interesting one. This actually looks a lot like mint, and it even smells a little bit like that too. And if I didn't have a mental memory of where I planted the snapdragon last year, I would think that these are all mint. And I think I have a lot of snapdragon growing now. Definitely not mint. But over here in this section, definitely mint. So right here at the end of the row, I still have to dig all of this out. I was talking about this just a couple weeks ago. I cut all of that back, but these are the mint roots, and I should probably put my gloves on. They're pretty tough to pull out, and they tend to run like crazy. So I do have a pitchfork. I might just go grab that and see how the pitchfork does against the mint. So I'm gonna see if I can't rip out a whole bunch of these roots and then maybe cut them in half with the spade. Look at this thing. This is the mint. It's in mint condition if anyone wants it. Well, I think I'm gonna have to spend a little bit more time removing this mint because this is probably at most 1/2. But I really just wanted to show you how much fun it is to remove mint. The goal is to leave this somewhere like in the middle of your driveway so that the mint just gets really hot under the sun and burns. That is one big chunk. I've got way too much mint. So I didn't order any new peas for this year. I've got Royal Snap peas here from Johnny's. I think these are a couple years old. The test date was January 2023. Then I have shelling peas, premium shelling peas. These are from 2022. And then I have some snap peas, sugar snap peas, also from 2022. And then I have my own seeds that I collected. I've got 3 bags that are from prior years, and these are probably the most recent. And what I noticed last year when I planted these, they germinated a few days before the other ones did, and I think they generally did better, which makes sense. It's a newer seed and maybe adapted a little bit to the environment during that year. You never know. The only thing I need to do is grab my shovel. I've got this styrofoam mat too. It's nice to protect your knees from getting super dirty and from hurting. All right, so why don't we get planting? So what I'm gonna do is dig out all my holes first, then just drop the peas in them and then just cover them up. It's just gonna be something simple like that. I'll just take a handful. There's 5 here. I'm just gonna dump them all in the same pool right there. So one tip is that if you have a wall or something where you can either tie a rope or a stake, that's gonna be helpful for the peas because they like to climb. And once they're in, we're just gonna cover them just like that. And because I'm not gonna plant anything else here, I'm not gonna mark them. I'm just gonna know that there's peas here. And hopefully in a couple weeks, we'll start to see them germinate. So it is the 2nd day of April, and I'm magically back outside in the garden, and I feel pretty good about that. Today, we're looking at my favorite thing to plant in the beginning of April. That's potatoes. So I'm going to tell you where I get my seed potatoes from, and I'm going to show you how I plant these potatoes. So let's start with Exhibit A here, which is a basket of interesting looking things, and these are all potatoes. And if you're wondering where these came from, well, they came from my kitchen counter. And why were they there? Because I left them there from last year. I harvested these, and as I'm harvesting them, I'm usually tossing them in a basket, and I eat what I can, and otherwise I just leave them on the kitchen counter. And these are probably sitting since October. So it's been 6-7 months since these were sitting there, and I didn't do anything. And you can kind of tell. These had probably a little too much light, so they're getting a little too big already. The ones that have these really long roots, ideally that would have happened in the ground. But it is what it is, and I'm still gonna plant at least some of these. The other basket here, well, this is another basket from my kitchen counter. And I didn't order any seed potatoes this year. And in fact, there's only 1 year that I did that. And I kind of regret it because they pretty much sent me bags of potatoes. And this right here, this is a potato that came out of a bag of potatoes. So this is a potato that over the last 2 months or so, I just tossed in a basket. And look what happens, seed potato. So in my opinion, this is almost the ideal seed potato because it's a thick potato. It hasn't rotted at all. You're not pushing your hand through it. It's not, it doesn't smell bad, and it's still kind of firm. It's holding up, and it's got these individual roots coming out of it. Now, a lot of potato tutorials you see will recommend that you cut it in half. You wait a day for that to scab over and then plant it with the roots up. With this particular potato here, I'm gonna plant it so it's face up like this, but instead of spending the time cutting it in half, I'm just gonna pull that off. I'm just gonna, whoa, and drop it. I'm just gonna scrape that off. Am I worried about it? No, not one bit. I'm gonna dig a hole and I'm gonna put it in the ground just like this. So in this basket here, I've got probably more potatoes than I have space to plant. So I think what I'm going to do now is just go through these 2 baskets and pick out the ones that seem probably the most viable for planting. With that said, I'm going to pick out some potatoes here and line them up. And one thing that I did want to mention is that you might have potatoes that are like this. They're the small sort of bite-sized potatoes. There's no reason why you can't use these. I'm not actually sure if these would be better or worse, but my theory is that potatoes that look like this, that have a little bit more mass to them, are starting with those initial nutrients in a greater quantity. And I'm not sure that the small potatoes are necessarily a cultivar, a variety of potato. These might just be all the small potatoes that they picked because they didn't have a good harvest. So they went into these bags, said, gold, mini gold luxury potatoes, add some kind of word like that. So I'm not gonna start any of these potatoes because I've got all of these potatoes. I don't know what happened with this thing, but that's something else. Ugh. All right, so now let's go through the basket. And the tricky thing about this for me is some of these are coming right out of the sides. And I'm not sure that I would be able to actually pull those through without snapping them. So this is probably not an ideal way to hold the potatoes over time. And in fact, if you wanted to do a better job preserving these potatoes to be seed potatoes, you could take a sheet of newspaper, wrap your potato in that, and then store it in a cool, dry place until a day like today. And then when you open it up, it should look a little bit less like it's So the next thing I'll do is figure out how many of each of these potatoes I want to plant. And to figure that out, I'm going to be looking at my garden space. I've got a garden row here. It's about 3 feet wide, and I forget how long. I think it's like 40 feet, but looking at it right now, maybe it's just 30. I should probably measure it, but I'm not going to today. So I'm going to say that I can plant at least 20 potatoes in each of those rows. So I should have to start about 40 here. So let's just count them up. So now we've got 30 right there. Now here comes the bigger challenge. I've got a lot of potatoes that don't even look like this. I'm not even sure that I can get 10 of them like this because these vines, these roots are so long. They're like vines. Like vines think alike. Well, we got a couple bonus ones here. Gardener's choice. We've got this crab looking potato this year. And we've got this like devil horns or butt thing to grow as well. All right, well that's enough of looking at the potatoes. I think we're gonna get to planting these now. I'm gonna be using my trenching tool. So I'm gonna start using that now. I'm gonna get shoveling. I'm gonna dig out a big old line all the way back to the end of the row. Then I'm just going to walk through and drop my potatoes in. So let's get to it. This width is all you really need to drop a potato in a hole. So you don't need to dig a 1 foot wide trench just to put a tiny potato in there. These are my drip irrigation lines. So that was a lot of work, and it had nothing to do with the potatoes. It was all about the mint. This pile right here, that's the second pile of that size that I've pulled out in the last 2 days. So that might look like a stack of hay, but this is all mint root. So the tricky thing about mint is once it starts growing, it doesn't stop. Seems like it goes down about a foot and has the tendency to just keep going and going and going. If you leave this in your garden bed for too long, it's gonna take over. Deer's running through in the background. Also hearing some sirens. So put 2 and 2 together. It's a venison emergency. So I think it's finally time to plant at least some of these potatoes. So I'm gonna get started on that. But before I do, I brought out one of my, I guess you could call it garden tools. It's a tape measure. And what I'm gonna do is lay this out right next to the trench. And this is gonna help me evenly space out where I put the potatoes. So I'm gonna be doing these about once every foot, maybe once every foot and a half. Let's take a look and see. So I just realized something. I said I wasn't gonna measure my garden bed today, and I wasn't planning on it, but I just did. So this garden bed is about 30 feet. All right, so welcome to the 2025 potato draft. And this year in first place, we're gonna be starting off, not the all-stars, we're gonna be starting off the purple people eaters, the little guys in the back. So why don't we go ahead and plant all of those purple ones on the outside. It feels like the wrong decision, and that's why I'm gonna do it, just for fun. So I assure you I didn't do this math in advance, but we have 30 in this line here. So that is exactly what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna start with this one right here, just for fun. And this is how easy it is at this point. You just walk down to the row. Well, not you, me. And you put your potato in. But now we have a little bit of a predicament, which is this, this root here. We don't really want that above ground right now. I think it's a little too cold. Ideally, that would be above ground in about a week. Unfortunately, that's what I'm doing. So now I'm gonna walk back and grab another one. And this one is a little bit smaller, so that should fit the space nicely. And now we look at our measuring tape and we see right here, we're at about 1 foot. So now I'm gonna put that one right in. And I think you know where I'm going with this. We're back over here, we're picking up this one. And this one looks like a weird spider creature. Here's our 2 foot mark, and we're gonna drop that in the hole. And in case you weren't sure exactly what was gonna happen next, we're walking back and you get the point. That one's gonna be going in right here. Well, I think you get where I'm going with this, so I'm gonna go ahead and plant all these in this row. Then I'm gonna be working down that second row and planting those, so when we get going. So for these potatoes with the longer roots growing out of it, if I put them at the top of the trench, you'll see they would be above the soil level. If I get colder weather in the next couple of weeks before it really warms up, it might jeopardize the potato, it might kill it off. So what I'm doing is taking my garden knife here and just digging out an additional few inches down. And that's enough to put it all the way down, and that adds a little bit more depth so I can drop it all the way down in the hole. And I'll cover the rest with the soil in a second. But that additional height should give me enough time and security for this potato to last a little bit longer. The roots that are sticking out, I think those are called chits, C-H-I-T-S. In this case, I'm creating a little more work for myself because I've got some pretty long chits. And I had to dig a little deeper to make sure that my chits don't see the light of day for a couple weeks. Anyways, I'm about to do the second row, but before I do, I have to fill this back in. So to fill it back in, I'm just gonna push that in with my rake here, but I have to get to doing this quick because the sun's gonna be going down pretty soon. And it's a little bit of a chilly day and I can feel the breeze. So why don't we get going? All right, well, the potato planting is done and the garden bed, you can't really see it right now, but I think it looks pretty good. We'll check back on that later. But in all, I think I planted about 62 potatoes, so we pretty much filled out the whole row, and I'm pretty happy with what I got done. Anyways, I'm exhausted from that and I gotta clean up, and it's cold and windy, and yeah, so I'm gonna pack stuff up, get inside for the night, but I do appreciate you guys watching the video to this point. Since you did, hope you liked it. If you liked it, hope you can tap that like button. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel because I told you so. All right, see you later. So another plant that I like to grow, and I start at this time of year, is edamame. And that might be a little bit surprising because it might seem like something that, you know, wouldn't easily grow in zone 6B, but it's really just a soybean. And the key to growing this, in my experience, is starting it around, we'll say early April. May's fine too. You could probably get away with starting this in June. And the plant's only gonna grow so much, but it's gonna stay there all year. And then when you get to September, October, you're just gonna see it start to go out of control, growing edamame, the beans, the pods. And I think the harvest is typically around September, October. This is one where you can just kind of set it and forget it. You can just put this in the ground, and as long as you don't weed it thinking it's a weed, then edamame grows easy. It's an easy harvest. The hardest part is really just picking the seed pods off the end because you have so many. And last but not least, I like to start something new every year, and we are going to be starting fava beans. I'm going to direct seed these and hope it works. Wish me luck. And since I'll probably forget where I planted the fava beans, I decided to just do them by the posts here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we got quite a few chives popping up right here, and I transplanted those last year. I had a little basket of chives that had been sitting around for years, and this is what the basket looked like before. It's about this size, and you can see how small these are, but these still look good. Could eat those right now. Transplanted them, and they're doing awesome now. And over in this garden bed, this might be my first ever garlic right here. I planted this one from a supermarket bulb last year. Pretty late in the season, I did not expect to see this in this garden bed. Here we have the cherry. If you take a look, we're actually seeing some buds on this. This is the one that I just ripped off the other tree. So if you're wondering if I was just completely full of nonsense, nope. Oh, I gotta go inside. I do have a couple of garden tasks that I want to catch up on pretty soon. I gotta get my jang seeder out here and seed a few rows, and I still have a bit of weeding to do, but all I can really say for today is that I don't want to be out here. So let's give it a day or two. It's early April, but this is the time when you feel like you're a little too early to get things going, and then you very quickly can start to feel like you're too late. So April 10th feels early. April 30th feels late. So one thing that I'm keeping an eye out for here in April is whether or not I'm going to get some more artichokes for free this year. 2 years ago in this garden bed, I planted Tavor and Colorado Star, and they did very well, but I kind of had a problem with cutting them and eating them just because I thought they looked nice. I let them go to seed, and I got some volunteers last year, and in fact I didn't have to start any inside because of how well the volunteers did. And this right here is what's remaining of one of the artichokes, and I think this is still filled with seeds. And as far as other volunteer plants go, I've got quite a few carrots popping up. Got a whole section of something right here, and I think those might be lettuces because they look similar to these lettuces right here, which are also volunteers. And the snapdragon really seems to be taking off. So the real reason I came outside today was because I started some seeds yesterday and I didn't quite get to finishing my onions. We have a 200 plug seed tray, and so far I have this filled with my proprietary soil mix. Potting soil, azomite, and worm castings mixed together, add some water, and then here we go. And underneath this tray you can see is another 10 by 20, and that's just to water them in. For right now the soil that's in here is wet. If you ever filled up a seed tray, put the seeds in, and then tried to bottom water the tray, you'll realize it's going to be pretty difficult. And so one of my biggest suggestions is to always pour a little bit of water into that soil mix before it goes into the tray. It's just going to save you a lot of time and frustration. And if you're wondering what's in the box right here, well, this is really about 2 years of seed collecting of onion seeds. So once your onion flowers dry out, they'll look something like this. So this tray right here has all of the onion seeds in it, but it does also have all of the flour. The most important thing for this is that there's no moisture around the seeds. So when you first harvest the flowers and they have the seeds in them, you want to make sure to hang them, dry them out, make sure they're getting airflow, because if they don't, they will probably get mold and be less useful. So I think I'm just gonna pick out 1 or 2 seeds and put them in each plug here. I have no concerns about using up a whole bunch of seeds, and it's also just a fun exercise to see how well these seeds germinate. My only concern right now is if the wind blows, I don't want this to go everywhere. So I'm gonna work kind of fast here. So that didn't take too long. So I actually just completed 200 right here, but I did find out early it would be nice to have something like this, garden shears, just to poke a hole and then drop the seeds in. So that's what I did, and then I started just taking my finger, pressing it into the tray, getting several onion seeds on it, and just kind of dropping them in the holes and then doing them in bulk. So this is gonna go inside. It's gonna be on a heat mat and under lights, and that's gonna help it to germinate faster and grow a little bit quicker. With that said, it's pretty cold outside and the sun's already down, so I think I'm gonna head inside and bring the tray with me.
All right, so it's a couple days later, and here are the onions. They haven't sprouted yet, but that's expected. It's probably going to take a few more days before I see anything green in there. So this whole tray is brassicas. These are all broccoli and cauliflower, and these sprouted just in a matter of a couple of days, and that's typically what they do. That's why they're typically used as microgreens. I have a mixed variety tray in here. And then we've got all peppers up in here. And this rack has heating mats, so it does attract cats. Just a heads up.
So today is April 15th and I'm back out here in the garden and I've got a few things to work on. I'm gonna step up my direct seeding game and I'm gonna get a lot more planted in this first garden row. And this is the same row that has my potatoes in it. So what I'm gonna do is plant down the direct center of this row, and I'm gonna be planting things that have a relatively short growing season. So today I'm gonna be seeding things like radishes, turnips, beets, peas, maybe some beans. But before we do that, I can see that the goldfish are out, so why don't we take a quick look at the pond. So I think I scared off the fish when I stood on the waterfall. Oh well. Had a frog just jump right there. So this is the willow tree. The tree site gave it kind of a funny name. It's the French pink willow tree. I'm not going to say the full name here, but you get the point. Anyways, this thing's really taken off, and I may end up transplanting this if it keeps growing, because it's kind of growing more than I thought it would. You can see the base down here is a little wild too. From here I can see the asparagus bed just past the waterfall. So why don't we go take a look and see if any asparagus have popped up yet. So we have no signs of asparagus as far as I can tell. So I think it might be another week before we start to see the asparagus. But one thing that I have just started seeing pop up right down here. Do you know what this is? If you guessed hosta, you are correct. Those hostas do look a little bit like bamboo canes when they start to pop up, but don't freak out if you planted a hosta. It's not bamboo, but I would say that a hosta is probably a deer's favorite snack. So if you have any deer around, you won't have those hostas for too long. So I brought out a few different types of seeds. Start with beets. These are the Touchstone Gold, and to plant I'm going to use my seed square. Now, do you need one of these? No, you definitely don't. But the seed square makes it so that you can line up your seeds in a way that looks maybe just a little bit better than if you do it by hand. You could also make one of these out of cardboard. It's pretty simple. Just take a tape measure, mark the board, cut a hole in it. Pretty easy. So I'm going to be using the square foot gardening approach, and I'm going to be doing a 4x4 for pretty much everything I'm planting right now, which means that every square foot's going to have 16 different plants in it. So since these seeds are kind of small, what I like to do is take a bowl and just pour some seeds into the bowl. That makes it so that when you're direct seeding, you don't have to keep sticking your fingers, which probably have dirt in them, back into the bag, back into the bag. So since I have potatoes on both sides of the garden, and in a few weeks, those leaves are gonna be probably a little bit tall and maybe overshadow some of what's in the middle, I'm only gonna do 1 square foot down the middle. Oh, that's pretty much the worst. All right, so it's just windy enough that I just lost all my seeds, and that was a little disappointing. I'm gonna put a rock in the bowl now to weigh it down. And we'll see if we get a few extra beets right in this spot. Okay, I no longer know if there's any more seeds. We're just gonna pretend like that didn't happen. All right, and we're back. It helps to have fairly level soil here. So I'm just gonna go across like this and put the seed tray down. So every color on the square has its own pattern. So the reds are for 16 plants in 1 square foot, yellow is for 9, blue is for 4, and the big orange one is just 1. So for beets, we're gonna do 16 in a square foot. And I think this little pokey tool came with the square. I kind of forget, but we're just gonna go ahead and stick that in there. And if you pull this up right now, you can see that little hole was formed. We're gonna go like this. We're gonna put our seed in. And if we take a look, we might be able to see our seeds in there. So we're gonna do that for all 16 now. It'll be a lot quicker if we do this in bulk. So what we're gonna do is mark every one of these. And I think I'm only gonna do 1 per square, maybe 2 in some cases. So now that's done. And you can see the nice little imprint we have here. And what I'm gonna do now is just put my glove on and just brush the dirt back in. And it's as easy as that. So I ended up doing 4 of these squares, so that should be about 64 beets. And now I'm gonna give these purple top radishes a shot. All right, well, we planted 4 more squares, so we've already planted 128 plants that quickly. So next up we have these hybrid turnips, and these are these snow apple turnips. They have a name that I'm not going to pronounce, but I'll show you that. And these seeds are getting a little bit old. These were tested in 2021, so hopefully they're still good. They've produced pretty well for me before, and they taste kind of like an apple. The wind's picking up a little bit. The bowl got away again, but I was able to recover most of those seeds and put them back in the dirt where they belong. So I think I'm gonna do 1 more over in this spot. And these are the hybrid round red ace beets. And I'll say that I've had mixed success with these. Well, since it's turning out to be such a nice day here in mid-April, I decided to bring out one of my favorite garden tools for seed starting, and that is the soil blocker. So this is a soil blocker. It's kind of like a stamper. So the concept is pretty simple. You stick this into soil, you pack in the soil, and then you stamp it out. And suddenly you have 20 cubes, no plastic, and you can start a seed in every one of those. So I'm about to start my first round of lettuces for the year, and I'll show you how I use my soil blocker. Before I start the soil blocking process, I want to pick out the different lettuces that I want to plant. So I'm going to go through my seeds here, pick out my lettuces, and then I'll know how many blocks I need to make. All right, so you might say, whoa, there's that wind again. So you might say that I have a little bit of a seed addiction, and I do, and I'm not ashamed about it. So this year I only bought one new pack of lettuce, and it's a Bib lettuce, and it's called Gatsby, so I'm definitely gonna try that out. And the lettuce that has the best resistance against bolting in the summer for me is always the Salanova, so I'm gonna put that aside as well. And it looks like I have some older Salanova, so I'll just put that back in the bag. So I don't think I'm gonna start watercress this year. I tried it in the past, I haven't had a ton of success, we'll put that aside. I did wanna start more celery, so why don't we put that in the pack? This premium greens mix did really well for me, but I don't think I wanna start that this year. This just keeps reseeding everywhere. And to be honest, I don't think I wanna start any of these. So I think I'll give the runaway arugula a shot this year. And we'll put the Astro arugula back. The endive has done pretty well. That's also done really well against bolting, so we'll put this one in the to-do pile. Whoop. Then we'll try the Sunland romaine lettuce. And everything's flying away. This is not good. Got a temporary delay while the wind picks up here. Gotta make sure that my seeds don't fly away. And we're back. Since we're trying the new Bib lettuce, why don't we just put this one back? And we're gonna try the other romaine, so we'll put this one back. And this Chinese cabbage has done really well too, so let's put this in the to-do pile. So we picked out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Since I picked out 8 different types of seeds, I'm gonna use my soil blocker 8 times. Each time it creates 20 blocks, so I'm gonna have 160 lettuce plants. Sounds like a lot, and it is, but it's fun. I could break this up, but I do find that when I'm making these soil blocks, it's best to just keep them together. These ones are pretty small, so they can break apart if you mess around with them too much. So before I get started, I'll tell you about the soil I'm using. So this is a bag of topsoil, and I added some worm castings, and I added some azomite, and just mixed it together and poured a little bit of water in. We're gonna get rained on. So I think I'm gonna be getting some bad weather pretty soon here. Well, looks like we're moving inside. So before I get started with the soil blocker, I'm gonna go ahead and write out the labels for 8 different types of lettuces on these coffee stirrers. So like everything in gardening, this can be a little messy. So what I'm gonna do is put a 10 by 20 tray on the table here, and then I'm just gonna take my blocker and stamp it into the tray to make the blocks. So I have the bucket here filled with the soil mix. I filled this jar with water just in case I have to add a little bit more, and I think I will have to. And this is an old soup container that I washed out to be recycled for this purpose. And actually there might be a little bit of the egg drop soup left in here, but I don't think it's gonna be enough to cause a problem with the lettuce. We'll find out. So all I'm gonna do is just scoop out some soil into this right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pour some in there. So this is about halfway full. I wanna leave a little bit of room so that I can put some more water in there. And when I'm stamping, I don't splash it out. Now, if I was outside, I probably wouldn't care as much. But of course, the rain came and here we are. So now I'm gonna add a little bit of water here, and this isn't gonna be an exact science. If that's too much, I can add a little bit of soil, and I'm gonna use my coffee stirrer here to mix it up. And I do actually have a coffee right next to that. So you can see it's a little bit more wet, a little sludgy almost. And this is what you want. Put it in the oven and it's ready to go. No, I'm just kidding. Now there's probably a little bit more water in this, so why don't we just give it a shot and see what happens. So this mix here, this might work, but it feels almost a little too wet. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a little more and let's give it another shot. So what I'm finding when I do this is that I'm really just pressing down the soil and it's not going into the blocker. And there's another trick you can do if you're experiencing this. So this is where things start to get messy, but you can actually take your mix and you can go ahead and you can fill it into the blocker like this. And this is actually something that I usually do, in fact, but it's been a little while since I've done this, so I kind of forgot that I usually do this. So the key here is to take your thumb or a finger and press into the soil. That's going to make it so that you have more dense compacted cubes, and that kind of helps it so that when you go to stamp this out, it doesn't break apart, because if it's not dense enough in there, it will break apart. So once you feel that each one of the blocks is packed with soil, you can kind of just brush off any of the excess back into that container. And now for the fun part. So I have a tray that has holes in it, and this is going to make it so it's really easy to water these just by bottom watering the tray. And then I have a solid tray underneath that, because right now I don't want any of this leaking onto my nice wooden slab. So these are all nice and tightly packed in there. And now I'm going to take my stamper and I'm going to choose the spot where I want these to go. And I'll say, before you stamp, it's a little difficult to move the blocks without them breaking apart. So what I like to do is just pick a spot where the stamp's going to go and leave it there. So I'm going to pick this very far corner to stamp, and I'm going to press down and then stamp and pull away. And I'm pressing firmly down, and let's see. Oh, it's stuck. So let's give it a second stamp. There we go. Magic. So I'm going to do this 7 more times now, and then I'm going to get to putting the seeds on after. And now I'm going to go ahead and just press down. I'm going to stamp. And last time it took 2, so I'm going to do that again. There we go. And there's another batch complete. And yes, they look like brownies. I don't advise eating them. There we are. So we have 8 groups of 20. So we have 160 soil blocks that we can start seeds in now. So before I put my seeds in there, I like to label them. And you might be wondering, how am I going to get a popsicle stick in these? And I'm not. So what I'm going to do is take my label here, and I'm going to put it right next to the soil block. And if you take a look over here, my seeds are arranged in this order right now. I'm going to use that same order over here so I don't second guess myself as I'm planting the seeds. Put the next one there. And now we seed. So I'm going to start with the bottom right and just work around. So this is the runaway arugula, and we're going to match that up with where it is in the grid here. So before you do this, I'm just going to note that it's really easy to spill seeds into different soil blocks, and you can suddenly get confused as to what landed where. So I would recommend getting a bowl, pouring this into a bowl, and then hand placing each of those into the blocks. So I really didn't pour too many seeds in there because the seeds are small, and this is already probably twice as much as I need. But each one is going to go. You can see that every soil block has a small indent, so we're going to go ahead and just try to get the seed into the indent. So I'm going to try to do about 1 per block, and I'll say that it can be a little tricky because certain seeds are just really small. And if you do end up getting 2 in a block, you can always just cut one out when they germinate. So it's not too big of an issue to overseed here, and in fact, I usually do. So make sure to pour those seeds back into the right bag before you start the next bag. You don't want to mix up the seeds. And I would also then take the bag and put it in the done pile, because you don't want to second guess whether you did the right seed or not. Just put it in a different pile and go to the next one. So next up is the Chinese cabbage. So we're going to go ahead and pour this in the bowl. Alright, so that step is now complete. We have 160 soil blocks already seeded. And before we do the final step to cover these with soil, I just wanted to point out a few things. So these right here, these are pelleted seeds. So the seeds get coated by the manufacturer, and that makes it so that it can fit nicely into a mechanical seeder. It also is a little easier for me to pick up and put in there, but they also roll around a little bit. I had to fish out a couple that went onto the tray. So over here, that's what lettuce seed typically looks like. And you might find it easiest to just press your finger into the bowl and have the seed stick to your finger and then kind of just hope for the best. But this one right here can be really tough. These were the celery seeds, and not only are these small seeds, but these are tiny seeds. And again, you kind of just have to press your finger and really hope for the best. It's kind of difficult to get the placement in there, but you're bound to get a few of them to come out good. So the last step now is just to take a little bit of soil and coat each one of these. So it's time to put the dirty gloves back on, and we're just going to take a little bit of soil, and you're just going to top off each one of these. And you don't have to be perfect about it. So while I'm doing this, I'll talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of using soil blocks. I think the first advantage is that these are something that you can just continuously create. So it's nice to have that sort of luxury to just make them and not have to fit them into plastic trays, which is basically the second advantage, and you're not using any plastic here. So there's no concern around microplastics or anything like that. So I think this is kind of a fun way to start seeds, but there's some people who may not enjoy this. This can feel like a little bit more work than just using the seed trays. It's also worth noting that soil blocks come in a lot of different sizes. I want to say that these are just the 1 cubic inch size. I also have a bigger stamper, which I don't use that much because I typically just get things started and then try to get them in the ground as quickly as I can. You would not want to start something like tomatoes or cucumbers or peppers. In these, I think these soil blocks are just too small. They will outgrow the space way too fast. But I do think these are great for what I'm doing here, which is lettuces, celery, sometimes onions, sometimes flowers. There's a lot that you can do, so don't be afraid to experiment with them. And just remember that when you have such a small soil block, it's going to dry out fast. And so this part's up to you, but I'm going to be taking these soil blocks, I'm going to put them on a heat mat and under a light so that they germinate a little bit quicker. And I expect that I'll see a lot of those lettuces sprout within just a few days. So with that said, I'm going to go put this under the lights, and I'm going to check back in a few days and see how they're doing. So there we have it. It is April 17th today, and the asparagus has finally popped up. And just taking a quick look at how those onions that I seeded the other day are doing. It's only been a few days, and as you can see, we're already seeing quite a few onions pop up. So here's a quick update on how some of my seed trays are doing. This is my brassica tray. These are broccoli down this side, cauliflower down this side. These were started on April 9th and it's the 27th today. So that means it's been about 18 days or 2.5 weeks. So these are looking pretty good for 2.5 weeks in my opinion. Over here, these are all the onions that I started earlier in the video. You can see that most of these are doing pretty well. And it looks like we have one right here that's not an onion. So I'm just gonna pluck that out, whatever that is. And overall, it's looking pretty good. And then last but not least, we have soil blocks. And you can see that these are all doing pretty good. Although our celery is really off to a very slow start. And this is sort of what I've seen in the past. I'm not sure that starting celery in soil blocks is necessarily the best option if it's going to take that long. That might just be way too much management of watering your celery and whatnot, but we'll see. And this one right here is still a big question mark to me. This is the Sunland romaine, and I don't recall romaine lettuce taking that long to germinate. It's a little windy out, so there might be something up with those seeds, and I probably will discard that from the pile. So we've had a few cloudy days in the last week, so the acclimation process here has been a little bit slower than I'd like, but I am looking forward to getting these lettuces in the ground pretty soon. And the same thing with the onion tray and the brassica tray. Oh, and the collars up front too. And if you want to see these trays get planted in the ground, make sure to tap subscribe so that you can see this in the next video. And that will tell me that at least someone else is interested in seeing these go in the ground besides myself. And just a quick update on the peas that we planted. It looks like the majority of the spots that we direct seeded have germinated, and the ones that have are doing really well. And you can see that these are even starting to grow tendrils. These ones right here are just tying to themselves. So that means it's almost time to start tying sisal to the trellis so that these have something to climb to. And if you want to see that, definitely tap subscribe. It'll be in the next video. So it is almost the end of April. It is April 27th today, but I just wanted to come out and show you how far this asparagus has come. This is the one that was right up against the border of the garden bed here, and this thing is 3 feet tall. So one thing about asparagus is that if you do not cut it and you let it grow, it's going to continue to get bigger and bigger and better every single year. So while I would totally love to slaughter the fat asparagus right here, I think what I'm gonna do to end the video is pick one of the asparagus in the back from a pretty healthy clump and just see how it tastes. So why don't we go harvest one of those and taste it. So this clump right here has 7 really tasty looking asparagus. So I figured I'd cut this one right here and see how it tastes. I can tell that the stem down here is a little tough, so I'm gonna cut the end of that and take a bite from right here. It's really good. So I cut about 6 inches off the bottom, and you can see that this is still over a foot long here. If you don't cook it, the bottom of it might be a little bit tough, and I can actually tell that right about here is where it starts to get nice and tender. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut the bottom off and save that for later, and take a nice bite out of this juicy part right here. And keep in mind, I haven't cooked this, I just cut this. So to me, this tastes a lot like eating fresh peas that you just harvested. So it tastes really juicy, it's nice and tender, and it just has a great taste to it. So as I get to the top of the asparagus, the flavor changes a little bit and it almost tastes a little bit salty, but in a good way. All right, well, I got a little bit of weather coming in, so I think I'm gonna wrap up the video here. And since you watched all the way to this point, I do really appreciate that. And I hope you liked it too. And if you did like it, could you do me a favor and tap the like button? That will help other people get to see the garden. And if you want to see more updates on this garden, how it's doing, and other projects around the garden, go ahead and tap the subscribe button now, and you'll see those updates when they come out. Thanks so much for watching. Happy gardening, and I'll see you on the next one.